Oh, wait, 1 second. Yeah, but I don't know if we've got audio. Hang on. Just in case. Oh, you can hear yourself? I just want to make sure. Yeah, I'm worried that y'all's audio isn't coming through because I can't see it coming through, and I'm really frustrated. I don't know if I'm. Yeah, that's. And this is the. I don't know why it's. Hang on. So yeah, so mine's coming through, but I don't think y'all's is. And
Oh, that's fine. I love talking about myself.
There we
and
go.
how handsome I am.
All right, let's yeah, there we go. I think I got it fixed here. I don't think y'all's is.
We love technical stuff, don't
Yeah, sorry everyone. It's fixed now.
Allegedly, I still don't hear me.
Fine. I love talking about myself. And how handsome I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
Okay, wait, no, I haven't heard me yet. We're not done yet.
Okay.
We love tech. Okay.
There we go. Okay.
All right, now, hey, welcome to Hopeful Resistance. We're glad you're here. Yet another episode with clusterfuckery beyond imagination. So, I am Sarah. This is my son Aaron.
Hi.
And we've had Josh join us today. And as mentioned previously, but you couldn't hear me, Josh is so stunningly handsome. I felt like it was incredibly distracting. And so he agreed to be behind the name screen. So thank you, Josh.
No problem.
And Aaron usually gets the privilege or burden or responsibility, however it feels that week, to pick what we're going to talk about. And this week is no different, except, of course, we have a guest who's specifically here to talk about a topic, so you don't get too much leeway. But what are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court case. Yeah, so if you yeah, I know. So if you haven't been paying attention, the Supreme Court basically ruled on 14th Amendment, but birthright citizenship. But as I understand it, they haven't technically gotten rid of it, but they've basically made it where, and Josh will talk way more in detail, where that the only way that it's a violation of the amendment is if it specifically hurts someone, and it's broken down to like a state level and all these other things. But
yeah,
that's why we brought on a legal expert, because like you read it and you're like, these are words.
So I have some questions. Of course, I put out to some of our folks what's what. But before we go too far, and I don't want to elaborate, if you've watched this show at all, we don't elaborate who our guests are. You're just going to have to trust that we brought qualified. But Josh, I will go ahead and say, has been an attorney for more than 10 years, or right
yeah.
at
I got barred in November of 2014.
Okay. So he's been an attorney for more than 10 years, and for most of that time, he's been in an appellate court writing decisions?
Yeah, so I'm an appellate law clerk, which basically means I'm an attorney working directly with a judge who helps decide appellate court decisions and write opinions for the state of Illinois.
Okay,
Nice.
super. And so what he's coming on today, I think the first thing that is really important is that we clarify what is the birthright citizenship.
So birthright citizenship is granted by the 14th Amendment. Essentially, it was a response to an infamous Supreme Court case called Dred Scott.
Okay.
And it basically ensures that every person born on U.S. soil is an American citizenship or American citizen by right.
And that correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason it's U.S. soil is because it's supposed to include like foreign bases and stuff too, right? Like if you're born on a U.S.
Yeah, I
base
mean, I don't know that specifically, like,
Okay.
But basically it says I believe the actual language is any person subject to the sovereignty of the United States.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know. I can pull up the text of the 14 minute. I probably should have done that already.
Yeah.
I mean, we did spring it on you 5 days ago.
Like,
I mean, no pressure or anything. Hey, you could Google it, right?
I can.
yeah,
Google
actually, you might have this already, Josh. Actually, there's a really good website. I'm not gonna hunt it down right now. But yeah, basically, that is just like, I think it's just the U.S. Constitution Center, and you can go in here and it literally just has all the articles and the amendments all broken out. It's pretty useful.
Well, I want to run kind of bead. I want to like bead the necklace here. So we've talked about what the birthright citizenship is, but I think although the birthright citizenship is impacted significantly, the decision that SCOTUS made was not directly related to birthright citizenship. Isn't that correct? It was more about whether the injunction that was issued by a state federal judge.
So, not state. So we're federalists set up. So it was a federal court within a state, but it's not a state. It's not associated with any specific state.
Okay, good
So,
to know.
so
Okay.
it's a local federal court, which is called a district court.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps.
So districts and circuits, right? Like because our circuits are like series of states? I mean, I'm just
So yeah, no. So circuit courts are the appellate courts, so the intermediary court of the federal judiciary. But so like the different circuits are multiple states are within each circuit.
Right.
So like all the district court decisions within a circuit are appealed to a singular circuit.
Okay.
So like Illinois is the 7th Circuit.
Okay.
Which is like Illinois and Indiana and stuff.
Aaron, your job is to find a graphic and we'll link it on the page so people can see the districts and circuits and all that. So a federal judge issued an injunction that stopped the current administration, and I hate to say his name, so that's the best I can do. Stopped the current administration from that executive order of rescinding birthright citizenship. And SCOTUS ruled that a federal judge cannot limit the administration. Is that the like super short version of what the decision was about?
No.
Not even close.
So
that's why you're here.
Yeah. So well, it's close, but so it's the actual decision is very narrow. It's more of a procedural. It's kind of like a or not a haha, but it's more of like gotta follow the rules kind of thing. So basically, just the short
rules. They don't have to.
Well,
sorry.
Well, they just said, "Hey, we're changing the rules. You got to follow it now."
Yeah.
But basically, what happened is, let's assume, for example, Aaron. They tried to take away Aaron's citizenship under this executive order. Aaron sued the government and says, "You can't do that." The district court, what they said is, "You know what? I agree. That's unconstitutional. So they can't apply that order to anyone in the entire country." So what they attacked were what were called universal injunctions, which were this idea that you can grant relief to people who are not parties to the case.
Because they would be affected in the same way, right? I'm sorry, we're both talking at the same time.
You go.
Yeah, I was the reason that it would have worked like that is because it basically is under the assumption that it would need to affect people even if they weren't even if they didn't have an immediate case, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And what was your
So
question, Mom?
basically, if it's not fair here, it's not fair anywhere because it's a national issue.
Well, so that's what the dissent argued. But the majority went a different route. But yeah, basically what they said is, look, if the government's trying to, enforce it against you, you can sue the government and stop them. That's fine. What the court can't do is, decide and apply that rule to people who aren't being affected by it, the order.
Right. And because
Wait, no, you need to say that again for the slow.
Yeah.
okay.
So basically, the summary of the decision was
Now say it the
injunction.
same way you just said it.
Oh,
Oh,
you can't. The court cannot prohibit the government from enforcing the order against somebody it's not enforcing it against currently.
so yeah. So so that was what I was talking about in the
Yeah, so I can't do anything to you, but when I show you.
yes. That was, I think, whenever we were talking about earlier this week, Josh, I think you put it in a very eloquent way. That doesn't mean that so you living in fear, yeah, that's not against the Constitution. It's just if they actually try to once they actually act upon it, that's whenever it's
Okay, Josh, this is typically where Aaron and I look at each other and go, so many
things.
because
Yeah.
the rabbit holes, like I'm standing, like listening to you say this, and I'm looking at 52 different rabbit holes right now. The immediate rabbit hole is, so essentially you're saying that the court decided that unless the government tells me, like Aaron may have the same birthright citizenship, but if they don't say anything to him, he's just
Then yeah.
fucked. But if they have to say something to me and I have to file a court case.
So that latter part, I think, from a policy standpoint, is the problem. It's right now what happened is if you apply it against one person, or let's say you apply it against 1,000 people, and a single judge says, no, you can't do that. The government is universally banned from applying this to anyone. Under the old rule, that just applied to everyone.
Right.
But now all 1,000 people have to challenge it.
Yeah, because
They're very likely going to get the same ruling.
Right.
Yeah, they talked about class action a little bit in it, but not even a class action.
But then we make the assumption that the person who has been told that you don't have birthright citizenship has the ways and means to file a case.
And that is the catch. That's the thing.
What happens to them while they're waiting for their case? Is this where we fill up all these detention centers they're preparing?
Honestly, it goes back to one of the things you guys always said is fast beats smart. Like this, the practical effect of this ruling is it's going to unfortunately allow people to slip through the system because they can't find a lawyer to do this quick enough.
Right.
And
there's not going to be enough lawyers who are willing to take the case or available to take the case.
Yeah.
Not to mention the court systems are going to be jammed ridiculously.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just creates an overload inside the courts.
Rabbit.
And I mean that's realistically going to be the unfortunate consequence of this. The other one is, let's take the example where he enforces it against 1,000 people. 999 judges say, no, this is unconstitutional. You can't do it. You get that one judge that goes, I'm okay with this. What the president can then arguably do is say, well, I have judicial approval. Therefore, I'm doing it. I don't care what those other 999 judges say.
Yeah.
And
I can do this.
And let me interrupt by saying he's going to do that anyway. We have seen him ignore all of these rulings, even like push him to the absolute limit of believability. So the SCOTUS ruling actually gives him the slippery slope. They give him ski poles and skis to go down this.
Yeah.
Well, and to sort of maybe temper that a little bit, I actually thought Judge Kavanaugh's concurrence kind of softened the blow on that very, very eloquently. I thought he did a good job of trying to warn against the gloom and doom possibility of this. Like what Judge Kavanaugh basically said is, although I agree that, basically it's an individual case thing, what happens is even though it's an individual case, these preliminary injunctions, they get appealed to a circuit. And then when a circuit decides on that issue, that law applies to that entire circuit. And when that circuit decision gets applied to or appealed to us, we have to decide it. And what we decide gets applied to everybody.
Everyone. Okay.
So,
So this is honestly, my argument was at the beginning of this, and it was not, let me just go ahead and say it was not well received, was that there is a process and that the federal injunction gummed up or threw a wrench in the process. The
or more like
argument
reshaped it, right? Because if what Josh just said, it's basically, if we thought the process was slow before, I mean, now
it's going to slow it down. Yeah,
now
it's going to
be even slower.
Because so before,
right, because to your point, but in between all this, and see, I still don't understand for the slow people. I hate to keep saying that, but I mean, law for most of us, based on the arguments and discussions that I've had with people, we don't get it. Your average person doesn't get it. And we're all trying to interpret law, and none of us know what we're talking about. And Chat GPT is not helping. Why? I hate to ask this question, and feel free to say, yeah, that's just a kaleidoscope of answers. Why would it not be solid that if you're born here, you're not a citizen? Well, I don't even understand. Like, why would there be a different case if the question is just you're
because
born
they're specific, and Josh can correct me, but it's because they're specifically targeting the American children that are born to migrants. So they call them anchor babies, but basically it's like you have a family that comes into the United States and they have a child here in the United States, which technically makes that child a U.S. citizen, and now you want to deport the family because they're migrants, but their child is an American citizen. So now the argument is, okay, can you deport an American citizen if their parents are migrants? So that's where it comes in, it draws into question the 14th Amendment, because you're deporting an American citizen.
I don't think you answered my question. And maybe I did not. I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay.
Not getting well.
Ask your question again, because that's sorry.
Yeah. Let me know when I can ask my question.
You can't. I'm done. I don't want to hear it anymore. We're moving on. We're doing something else now.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining.
This is a great show.
Okay.
Sorry.
The question, I have a baby, like at 64, I'm sure that's actually going to happen. I have a baby on U.S. soil. The question is, if that baby has birthright, they're born here, they belong here. So I don't understand the question about whether or not that child is a citizen. That just seems to be, and I'm asking Josh, not you, Aaron.
Okay.
That seems to me to be the cut and dry, and I don't understand why that would even need to go to court.
So I think I have a couple of thoughts on this. One, I don't think there's any rational and reasonable argument that the 14th Amendment doesn't mean that, but that isn't the point. The point is twofold. One is should that be the law? And I think there's reasonable debate for that. Not is it the law, but should it be?
Yeah, because that's the mega point, is that should not.
Fine, and we can have a debate about whether that is true, but it's not questionable about whether it is the law. The second point is actually something that I think that the current administration, if you want to call them that, has been doing, is essentially creating test cases. They're doing something that they know is unconstitutional to try to get specific issues before the court. And this goes back to something Aaron said at the beginning. Typically, one foundational rule in our law is the courts only address cases and controversies. They can't grant relief to somebody unless they're being harmed, or unless there's an actual active disagreement or harm that's ongoing. So going back to like,
That
let's go.
goes back to Aaron's point about harm.
Yeah, so like a big thing was back in the civil rights era, test cases were brought to try and like pick perfect plaintiffs for these civil rights lawsuits. And they were like set up into circumstances. Like Rosa Parks, for example, this wasn't a natural thing. She was chosen to do that because she was so likable and because she was the perfect person to make that stand.
Yep, that makes
But
sense.
so test cases, so they pick cases where they think, oh, this plaintiff or this situation gives me the perfect opportunity to challenge something I want to challenge, because a court can't affect the law unless there's a case which brings that issue to front.
So basically what you're saying, I'm going to repeat it back. What I hear you say is the issue is not birthright citizenship. The issue is pushing the envelope to begin to tear down this process of birthright citizenship.
Well, I actually think for a lot of people in that administration, no, they want to argue that the 14th Amendment doesn't mean what it means. But in a lot of ways, yeah, they want to, because you can start chipping away. And
Well,
there's
wait,
a big
no, if we're going to do that, then the Second Amendment doesn't mean what it means.
Well,
you
mom,
what's actually funny is
Family Guy
you
already
say
addressed
that.
you know.
You say that, but the chipping away was actually making it much more like it is now. Up until like the 80s, mid 80s, people were like, man, gun control's fine with the Second. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Like pass a law that controls guns. And the chipping away was actually expanding the Second Amendment. It was the same process, but it was chipping away to expand a right as opposed to limit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the NRA, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rehab. We talked about what birthright citizenship is. Born here, you should belong here. But the question is then, the decision that SCOTUS made was not about birthright citizenship. It was about is it fair to say jurisdiction?
No, jurisdiction is a specific concept. It's the scope of injunctions, the scope of equitable relief.
And so now, I mean, the discussion, I mean, really, let's be honest. If this decision was made under any other administration prior to this one, people would just be, they wouldn't be grousing about X. They would be grousing about the additional paperwork, the additional court cases, the additional load on the court. But I think the reason people are losing their shit, and I'm not saying it's unjustified, is because this particular, I mean, the example that was tossed at me, and I'm not going to say that they were wrong. The example tossed at me was, well, what if he writes an executive order that says women can't vote? Well, then every, state has to then have a case brought before their court to feed it, let it percolate through the food chain.
So I actually want to point that out. So the Supreme Court's decision did not strike down universal injunctions. And in fact, the exception.
Yeah. What? I thought it did.
No, it said when an individual party is the case, they're often not going to be suitable. But they actually left open a specific exception. So part of this case was also state defendants. States sued the federal government to say, this injunction affects our citizens and it affects us as a state. So in a representative capacity, we're suing to prohibit the enforcement of it against our citizens. Right. And the Supreme Court specifically said universal injunctions might be appropriate for the state defendants or the state plaintiffs.
Fuck's sake.
But we're not saying they're not. All they're saying, what they said is.
So if every state brought a case that said, on behalf of all of our citizens, you can't deny them birthright citizenship, then what?
Sure. Yeah. Whatever the court said, right? Like it left it open. Like, so this was basically they didn't answer a question in that context. What they said was
the non-answer.
Yeah. So it's often what the court does is they remand the issue and they want the circuit court or the district court, I can't remember who they remanded it to reconsider the issue in light of what they've said about injunctions generally.
Oh man.
I guess my question is, if it wasn't on such a hot button issue, like where does this, is there any upside to this, like on future court cases, like on in other ways? I guess is what I know.
Can I act like I know something here,
Yeah,
Josh?
I mean,
Sure.
Indulge. Doesn't this, I mean, assuming we didn't have a batshit crazy administration, and it wasn't about such a pretty important thing, doesn't this mean though that no longer can, by way of example, the Republicans run to their favorite judge and they issue some national injunction? Now it has to be, different things have to be tried in every.
yeah, like
Sure. Yeah. No, that's true.
And this could affect almost every right too, right? So this could include things like gun
Josh,
control.
I'm asking Josh, Aaron.
No, he answered the question.
He's the attorney.
He answered the question.
Fight.
I want to hear it again.
Oh God.
No, yeah, that it's a, it works both ways. Like, so yeah, no, it's but yeah, so no one can go to the court and get those.
One of the upsides to answer the thing. One of the upsides is no longer can Republicans run around finding their favorite judge who's going to issue a national injunction.
Right.
Sure, exactly.
He said that, and then I was like, that means this could also affect things like gun rights. And you're like, let Josh answer.
Hey, but I asked Josh.
I know. He did.
Yes.
I'm so confused. I'm so confused because
the fact that you were right.
No. I'm so confused because you asked the question, he answered the question, and then I like literally just added a thing onto it. And you're like, let Josh answer. I'm like, he answered it.
I didn't hear him answer.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at his name. I can't see when his mouth is moving. Actually, the old ears actually have to pay attention now.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, Mom, we already went over it. You wouldn't have heard him answer if he was on camera anyway. So, because you'd have been distracted by his handsomeness.
You're so right. I appreciate you letting me be on the show and all of my deaf stupidity.
Oh my God. Get out of here. It's probably more your show than mine.
Thanks for letting me be a guest on your show.
Look, I'm just the engineer, okay? I just do the tech side of this shit, okay?
Oh God, that's too funny. Okay, so Josh, where are we and what have we forgotten? Because I hear you made notes and hopefully I'll get
did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I need to send him to Mom. That's all. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Oh, I mean, really, there's not much to talk. I mean, the big thing too is like some of the policy things that have been discussed, and there's a couple quotes I was going to go through that talk about sort of the dissent. Let's talk about the dissent for a second. As might be expected, the dissent.
Would you explain a bit I think the general American public, literally liberals and Democrats are shocking me with their lack of knowledge about how we always talk about how MAGA doesn't understand how it works. Well, they don't need to because fast beats smart, right? And so we need to understand how this works. So if you would just super briefly delineate a decisions made, the dissenting, blah, blah, that whole kind of process so people understand what a dissenting, I mean, they know the word dissent, but you know what I'm saying?
I dropped it into the podcast drive, Mom, if you want to go grab it.
Okay.
Sure. So there are typically three parts to any decision. There's the majority opinion, there are concurrences, and there's a dissent. So the majority decision is the narrowest ground upon which the most people agree.
And
okay.
Right.
And that typically is, either 6-3 or 5-4, whatever. A concurrence is somebody who agrees with the legal outcome, like affirming or reversing or remanding, whatever, but has slightly different reasons for doing so. The most famous of which on this court is Thomas, who often concurs by himself for insane reasons. Like insane things, he says, that nobody else agrees with because it's crazy. A dissent is somebody who disagrees with the outcome of the case.
Okay. So in this case, there was a majority of 6-3, and were there any concurrent on this?
Yeah, there were concurrences by Thomas Alito, which I didn't read because I think they're junk.
Right.
And then there was a concurrence by Kavanaugh, which I actually thought was very well written. I actually, I disagree with Kavanaugh about certain things, but this was a very well written concurrence.
I think the way that you explained it too does kind of take the doom and gloom out of it. But my concern is just like like this. The courts have already been so slow to react to the administration to like balance back the power that now I just feel like if we were driving slow before, we've just gone to a screeching halt. Like,
so I don't know what the federal rules are, but like, so preliminary injunctions are emergency temporary measures, which are granted at the beginning of a case before a full decision. And in Illinois, when these are appealed, they're decided very, very quickly. Like, I think our rules give us like, they give the parties 3 days to each brief it, and then we have to decide it in 7 days. Like, it's fast.
That is fast.
No, that might be a TRO, but either way, like these are done very expeditiously. So that was part of what Kavanaugh says is he's like, yeah, there might be a slight slowdown, but at the end of the day, it comes to us. And when we get an appeal from a preliminary injunction, we have to decide it.
right.
We don't get to hide.
So let
so
me,
like,
I know you guys are like, he's already said that, but again, I'm not the only person listening.
I know.
I have old people, friends who are listening.
Yeah.
So I am told my birthright citizenship doesn't work. I go to a court, it ends up at the appeals court, the circuit court. You're basically saying it's going to move up the food chain and ultimately end up at the Supreme Court if they're deciding against me all the way up, right? Or if there's this.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be if they're deciding against you, right? It would be because
The government appeals.
Yeah, the government appeals, right? And so it has to go the next time. Yeah.
So they decide against me, or the government says, yeah, no. But what I understood you to say earlier, Josh, is even if they decide, the Supreme Court decides in my favor, the administration could say, well, yeah, but there's 50 other cases that disagree.
Possibly, yeah. That's one of the risks of this. The benefit of universal injunctions is that basically you're putting all your eggs in one basket and you're going for the home run. You win this case or you lose the issue. Like, whereas if
we don't have that luxury anymore, do we?
No, we don't. Like one of the things about the majority opinion in this case is when the Supreme Court talks about an issue, they don't talk about it in the context of a single case. So in non sort of super important constitutional cases, this ruling does make a lot of sense. Like,
because they can't make decisions based on the fact that there's an insane person in the administration right now, right? They have to make the case based on rule of law and normal functioning of the legal system. We are not in a normal situation, which is, I think, what makes people want to be frothing at the mouth and screaming about how this is wrong. Now, I do agree, born here, belong here, but
yes.
Yeah, so it's one of the things that the Supreme Court is and it's honestly one of the reasons that they are like, look, we need to be careful here and not do things that affect every single person because maybe somebody else has a different set of facts, which changes the calculus on whether or not they get an injunction. So you can't just
make a decision about born here, belong. If you're born, I don't understand why that's even.
They didn't make that decision. They explicitly did not make that decision.
What would it take to get them to make that decision? I think that's where I'm confused.
The cases that are currently out there making their way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so this was only an appeal from a preliminary injunction. So an injunction, and again, I'm speaking only with like knowledge of Illinois law. So a preliminary injunction is just You file the case, you seek a preliminary injunction. The court just kind of does a quick look at the facts and goes, I think you might win, so I'm going to just enjoin you now so that you don't get harmed by this conduct when we go through a full trial and make a full injunction, a permanent injunction.
Or
So these, pardon me?
or they could rule against you.
Yeah, I mean, it is very rare that you grant a preliminary injunction and then don't grant the permanent injunction.
Because they're pretty
At least,
a 90-10 that you're right and you're going to get your.
yeah, it's very close. It's almost, and a court can deny a preliminary injunction and then say, you know what, after full trial, I actually think you're right and you should be enjoined. And a permanent injunction is not, there's no time limit. It's just you can't do this ever again.
Okay. Okay.
So
And can a permanent injunction ever be appealed?
Oh yeah, everything can be appealed.
Okay. So permanent is loosely used here. It's not like
I would say though that if it's permanent and you appeal it, it's highly likely the next judge is going to go, I mean, yeah. Right? I mean,
so we're
yeah.
The administration is using this as, it's kind of like when a kid keeps getting in the cookie jar and they know they're not supposed to. They're just like trying to wear you down.
one of the dissents actually, I think, had it that it was almost like that the administration is basically saying, hey, we know that you're telling us to stop violating the Constitution, but can we violate it again? Can we just keep can we just keep violating it? Like, we know you said no, but can we just like keep doing it?
So
Oh, you go, Josh.
no, the effect of this is to allow Steve Bannon's strategy of flood the zone.
Yeah,
That's what this is.
Oh,
we talked about.
we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, just fire hose.
Yeah, what did they?
There's no whiskey, it's just water.
It's the rapid fire is what it is. He says, just put it on rapid
So
fire.
I mean, I've said this before. I mean, okay, so we need to tear it all down and revisit the whole Constitution. Like it, but I mean, the thing that is frustrating to me is that this is the absolute sloppiest, most chaotic way to do it. So
yeah, I would push back against that a little bit. I disagree with the majority opinion, but I don't think it's crazy. Like, there is logic to it. There is, and it depends upon your view.
If I see that you think there's logic, but tell me what your basis of disagreement is.
So for me, the disagreement is injunctions are what are called equitable relief.
Okay.
So historically,
we don't want anybody to get harmed.
Yeah, so like equitable, so there's two kinds of relief generally in the law. There's legal relief, which is money, and there's equitable relief when money isn't enough. Okay. No adequate remedy at law is what the test is. And the test for equitable relief is essentially what is fair? What would do justice between the parties?
Right.
And what the majority's opinion did is said, well, what did equity mean in 1789 when they passed the law to allow the judiciary to exist? And that's called originalism. But my disagreement is,
Barrett, right? She's an original.
Yeah, she's an originalist. Thomas Scalito, like Thomas is a famous originalist. Like,
how would people even be that way? Like, I mean, the world is just so fucking different than it was.
Well, yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
But in regardless of whether I agree with that about some things, equity by nature, the test is literally look at what's happening right now and determine what's fair. By nature, the test of equity is not an originalist test. It's a present day test.
Right.
Equity by nature cannot be originalism, though.
Yes, that is my fundamental disagreement with the opinion.
Yeah, you can't measure equity. I mean, hell, if we measured equity by when the Constitution was written, then I am like, can't even be speaking in public.
Yeah. Mom, why aren't you wearing a bonnet?
I know, I have all these, I have all these.
You have tattoos? Oh my God. What a savage.
I'm sorry, I just woke up like this. I don't know how.
And so, yeah, originalism is the biggest philosophical difference between conservative justices and liberal justices. It's the idea of we measure the Constitution and we interpret the Constitution in light of what the people thought when they enacted it. That's originalism.
But let me say, in their defense, and it hurts me to even say that, if you drilled down the originalist thought of what equity and fairness was, it could be considered, the idea of equity and fairness could be considered without the context of environment. I don't know a better way to say that. So we're saying, okay, equity, equity and fairness in 17 is complete. I just said that is completely different than what it is now. But if we're talking about the basic fundamental concept of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Okay, back then, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness meant something completely different physically and environmentally than it does right now. But the basic core thought is this.
Yeah.
So I guess I understand the concept of originalism, but you said you disagreed. And is that the basis of your disagreement, is that we have to look at equity in light of where we are in 2025?
Exactly. Yeah. So to me, equity and the idea of equity and the test for equity is inherently inconsistent with the idea of originalism. It's philosophically incompatible with originalism.
I need to ponder that. I mean, I'm not saying I disagree. I need to
Yeah,
figure I can.
spend some time.
And essentially that's what the dissent said too.
Okay. So I think we need to summarize. We've got a few watching, and then of course we're going to have people watching the
Yeah,
recording.
the rewatch, the rewatching.
The rewatch of the batshit craziness
Yeah.
of known as hopeful resistance. So there was a decision made about birthright citizenship, the decision by the Supreme Court. They skirted the issue and they were actually focused on procedures. We do not have any decisions that have been made about the 14th Amendment. They have been made about whether an injunction by a federal judge can apply nationally. And the situation now is anybody who is told that they do not have birthright citizenship is either going to suffer the consequences or they will need to file a court case. And their status while the court case is in process is...
Yeah. And they have 28 days now. I think it's 28 days. Because that ruling is
has 28 days.
Yeah. So the ruling doesn't go into effect until for 28 days.
That's so great. So they get to spend 28 days being in complete and utter fear of what the fuck.
Yeah. I mean, there's already been class actions that came out of Maryland and somewhat New Jersey, I think. So there are.
Oh, you go.
Oh, it's just there are already people, like there are already wheels in motion in several states.
That's a wise move of states that support birthright citizenship would be to create class action lawsuits?
Me? Well, the thing is,
Another Josh on the show?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you say Josh.
Yeah, see, Mom, you're not the only one that's deaf. Jeez.
No, sorry, I was too busy looking at my nameplate. No, so when a state sues, they don't need to create a class action. They are a single plaintiff in a representative capacity.
Okay.
So do you think that it would be a good strategy for as many states as embraced birthright citizenship to file?
Because it could cover whole circuits at that point, right?
Yeah, no, it arguably could. That's a more tricky question because there is there's a question of whether states have standing to sue on behalf of the citizens. Because again, one of the things
Pandora's box here that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's complicated because again, in the court can only decide cases and controversies, and to have standing to sue, you have to have suffered some harm. And there is an argument.
You can't pre-suffer harm. Anxiety is considered fear.
No. Unless it's caused by some, tortious conduct.
Right.
Like you have to have something had to have happened to you to sue, and that's part of the problem. And this is a quote from the dissent, I think, that summarizes this. The court's decision is nothing less than an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution. The executive branch can now enforce policies that flout settled law and violate countless individuals' constitutional rights, and the federal courts will be hamstrung to stop its actions fully. Until the day that every affected person manages to become a party to a lawsuit and secures himself injunctive relief, the government may act lawlessly indefinitely.
I have nothing to add to that.
That is, in my opinion, a beautiful quote from the dissent.
And you know what? I would put out that if we didn't have such a batshit crazy administration right now, this would be more focused on the additional paperwork, court cases, and all that versus we're shipping people out.
Well, this case would have never arose outside this.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
part
I mean,
part
truly.
of the thing is universal injunctions have existed for a while, and they talk about this, but like
I
in the
looked that
past,
up. Like Trump has had the most universal injunctions of any president. Like
the
50.
last two administrations have. Like this has become a major tool, and it's becoming weaponized, and that's part of the good thing about the decision is the majority says let's stop doing this. Let's go back to being narrow and being not like this sort of like
This,
impeding on everything. Like let's resolve the case before us and we can go from there.
Yeah, this reminds me too of a thing that we've talked about in the past of like this decision wouldn't be as catastrophic if we assumed that the administration was operating in good faith.
Correct.
And,
Well,
and they're not.
That every single discussion that I've engaged in person and threads, which is really where I have the majority of civil debate, is based around the fact that what the current administration will do to abuse the decision.
Yeah. That's a high risk.
I mean, Josh, you've admitted we have you on record as you've watched our podcast before, so you know our big thing is, okay, so how the hell do you remain hopeful, and what's the action item here? What would you suggest?
I mean, how to remain hopeful is the fact that I highly doubt that anyone who has this executive order enforced against them is going to lie down and just go like, okay, I guess I'm not a citizen now.
Yeah.
People are going to fight, and they're going to fight like hell. So it may take a little bit longer, and it may be a little bit more, discordant, but people are going to fight. People are not going to just accept this.
Yeah.
So like, again, this is a procedural thing that can be abused, but at the end of the day, the court did not actually affect the rights of any individual person, because if something happened.
Say that one more time very clearly, because I want to be sure we clip that out and we push it out to people.
The court did not affect the rights of any individual person.
And I think that's important because people are losing their shit right now.
Yeah, no, and it's hyperbolic. I saw so many clickbait headlines like, "Oh, they rule on birthright citizenship." They literally didn't. Not.
Yeah, they literally did not.
But I want to say, from a behavioral point of view, people are so on edge, and this panicky feeling of losing control and no direction, not sure what and again, what are the action items here? I mean, there's no one to call. The Supreme Court has made a decision, so it's not like we can call our reps and say, you need to protest this decision. So
that's actually not true.
Oh,
so the basis of the court's decision was the 1798 Judicial Act, the Judiciary Act, which basically is the federal law which creates the judiciary, because the Constitution only creates the Supreme Court, and the Congress controls the appellate courts and the district courts. Congress creates those courts and can control those courts. If Congress amended the Federal Judiciary Act to add universal injunction as relief that the district courts could grant, then they can grant them.
That was actually the question I was going to ask, is couldn't Congress just pass a law saying, hey, this is okay?
Like, they absolutely can.
Okay, I am I'm going to repeat back what I think you just said. The action item, there is actually an action item here against the ass hattery that's going on right now, that people could call their reps and say that they need to add universal injunctions to the authority granted to the federal courts.
Federal district courts, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, that just seems too easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. You can do it.
Yeah, the real question is whether or not somebody would. But yeah, I mean, the interesting part of it is I'm sure that there are representatives that would. I mean,
base would.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Democrats are going to be back in power. I think the midterms are going to be a turn, and when we vote again for president, I'm completely rejecting that is not going to happen. When we vote for president again, hopefully we'll have a majority of some kind. So
and I'll make my pitch as to why I think it should happen, if you want.
Yeah.
So basically, this is the example I gave to Aaron. In a normal case, it's A versus B, right? And if A gets an injunction against B, that injunction should have absolutely no effect against C, right?
Okay.
But when B gets an injunction against A, and A is the executive branch, every single case on this issue, the same A is going to be the A. It's not going to change. Every case is against the same person. So it's this idea of, well, they've had their chance to fight this issue. Why shouldn't they be barred from enforcing it to everyone?
Right. Because if they lose it for one person and everybody else's case is going to be against,
and the exact same issue, why should they be able to go, well, you haven't said it yet, court?
Yeah.
I mean, this is honestly, Aaron and I have mentioned before, just tear it down and build it up again, because this is just the convolutions, the mental gymnastics and the Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, well, and I think because I think I've said before, I don't know that that would definitely be the easiest way, but it just seems like we've had this conversation ad nauseum about like.
Okay, I think we have a Humpty Dumpty situation with the government. It will never be like it was before. Things have been destroyed, then broken and disrupted, that will never be repaired. The question is, what do we want? I mean, right now we're fighting some stupid battles, like with this big bullshit bill that are just so off the chart. Crazy.
Or the mayor of New York. That's the other one that's out. That's going.
As we say, Aaron.
So many things.
Oh, and the shirts are in.
Yeah.
I think the shirts should be delivered on Monday. So I'll hold down your, excitement. Like I slaved over a hot stove.
Yay! Oh my God! I'm so. Oh my God! The shirts are in.
I am so done with you. Okay, I'm pretty sure we beat this dead horse. I mean, honestly, first of all, let me start with Josh. Thank you so much. And
oh yeah,
the worst part.
No problem.
The worst part for me is like this is like literally starting, you're trying to go 100 yards across the field and there are 572 rabbit holes and you're trying to, go through there's just so many things.
Some of them are mines.
Yeah.
Some are full of dog shit. So Josh, I mean, what would be your closing thought? I mean, I'm excited about your take on your perspective on how to be hopeful and the hopefulness to be found. And I'm real excited about this action item. But if you were to leave us with a, paragraph or so of summary of your time here today, I mean, what do you want people to remember about this conversation?
First, breathe. If the realistic only consequence of this is it's going to cause more of a headache for people who are already being harassed by this administration. At the end of the day, no court has said the 14th Amendment doesn't apply, birthright citizenship isn't real. Like that has not happened. So, and there are plenty of legal aid, and I'm sure pro bono lawyers will take up this issue and fight for you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of organizations, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know any off the top of my head, but the only thing that you need to remember is from this decision, no one is going to fight for you. You have to fight for yourself.
Right. And I think I will say, I think that is a succinct summary of the fear that we are seeing with these clickbait headlines and that kind of thing. I think this has ignited a bigger fear than anything the administration has done so far, because it is not just going after the criminals who are, illegal. This is going after people, or the criminals who are here illegally, undocumented, however the phrase.
undocumented, I think, is the correct phrase. I stopped saying illegal because once you look at the process, right? I mean, they're
Right?
yeah.
That's why I say criminal, illegal. But
Yeah.
but I think what's scary now is that this is, once it goes after the people who are birthright, then who's it going to go after next? So I think this has really ignited finally some people who have not been paying attention about the slippery slope that we're, jet skiing down is become clear to them. So I like this. Aaron, any last words you'd like to share?
No, I mean, call your reps, call them about everything. I call make sure, make sure you're getting on there and calling them, or resist bot, just whatever means and willingness you have. We always talk about, cooking cupcakes for protesters as a form. I would say that for this thing, maybe look at an organization near you that is looking to, represent migrants, and see if you can help, see if you can donate if it's something you want. Maybe go cook some cupcakes for the lawyers that are going to be, right in the.
I think that's a really good point. And for to put that into context, every week we talk about action items, and it ranges from using 5 calls or resist bot, reaching out to the card campaign and printing out some of those documents, getting involved with the indivisible groups, or protesting at the 501 things. But the other things that we talked about is, if you don't like people, if you don't want to engage with people, if you are limited with your time, your energy, your tolerance for people, your ability to do things, there are so many other ways. And we did talk about baking cookies and cupcakes, which is why Aaron brings that up. I mean, there are so many ways. Go file for somebody, sweep their porch, take them bottled water. I mean, resistance is so many different things. It has so many different faces. Don't let anybody tell you. And I mean, we could have a whole episode on the cannibalism going on right now with the Democrat. But that's enough.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be the, I guess the only thing I'd want to say.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. And we do have links on the show page with all that stuff. So, all right. Anything else before I
just want to say thank you guys for letting me come on.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.
And don't worry, I'll continue to argue with Aaron on Discord. If I'm one of the friends he has mentioned that he's argued with over the course of the years, so
yeah, it's usually you or that other the other Discord that I hang out in. But I mean, it's not just those two. I'm trying to get a little more involved in some of the more closed debate spaces. I don't stream those, but maybe I should. It's daunting to stream debates, especially whenever you're an idiot like me. So no, but yeah, thanks for coming, man.
No problem. I appreciate it.
So, okay, well, for those of you who have been tuning in, or for those of you who are watching this after the fact, Until we get together again, bye for now.
Adios.